Have you ever read a book that was just explained to you? It kind of takes the magic away, huh? This is where show, don't tell comes in. Today I'm going to break down what that means, and when you stay till the end, I'm also going to give you tips about how you can apply that to your own writing to make your stories even better. So in its simplest terms, show, don't tell basically means allowing the reader to experience the senses. So this is like, what can they see? What can they smell? What can they feel? What can they touch? What can they taste? That way the reader is immersed in the feeling. So when you're telling somebody something, it could be like this example. You could be like, she was angry. You're telling them she was angry. But when you're showing anger, you could put it to something like, her face was flushed red. She clenched her fist and stormed out of the room without saying anything. And you can see that that's painting a picture of what anger is and how it's much more impactful, and you have more of an emotional connection to that versus just, she was angry. She was angry doesn't give you anything. And so when you're writing and you're thinking about show, don't tell, it's important to kind of look at what you're doing and being like, okay, am I telling people what to feel and think, or am I really showing these characters and making them feel real and alive like how a regular person was? And I would definitely recommend just think about all the senses. I wouldn't say that you have to use every single sense all the time, but definitely incorporating that into the writing is really going to go a long way. So like, why is showing important? Showing basically is just going to help your readers be more engaged. And it's gonna let them feel emotions. It's gonna make everything feel more realistic and humanized. And it makes you connect more just with the overall story. And when you're thinking about showing, it's important because like what it does, it helps build the atmosphere, helps build the tension. It shows the empathy of the characters and really gets you that emotional value. Whereas when you're telling, it kind of feels like a report, to be honest. You're like, she was angry, and then she walked outside. The sun was bright, and she was mad. And it's like, yeah, it just feels like bullet points. A really great example of showing instead of telling is actually, I'm gonna pull it from this book that I just finished, A Song to Drown Rivers by Anne Lane, and I think she does a fantastic job. So I'm going to read out the line of her showing, and then I'm gonna change it to telling so you can see the difference. My skin parted easily under the blade, my wound reopening. Fat droplets of blood oozed out and trickled down my sides, dampening my robes. The blaze of pain came soon after, so acute I found myself stamping my feet, trying anything to distract myself from the agony in my shoulder. And so now we're going to change it to me telling you that. I took the blade and stabbed it into my shoulder. It bled and it hurt. So diving a bit deeper into this, when we're analyzing Anne Lane's writing, we're looking and seeing like, my skin parted easily under the blade. So that's given us a really good vision. Like, what can we see? We can see the skin now opening up. What else do we have? My wound reopening. So now you're imagining like this was already an existing wound that she had, and now it's kind of being peeled open. Fat droplets of blood oozed out. Visually, now you're seeing big, thick droplets of blood. It could have been like, if she doesn't explain that it's like these are fat droplets, maybe you would have imagined something like small or like squirty. And so it's important that she's kind of using that kind of language. And then trickled down my side, dampening my robes. So this is another thing that you can feel. The character can feel this, and now you know it's kind of like a wet, damp part of the outfit that she's wearing. And then the blaze of pain came soon after. And so she expands more on this because right now she's demonstrating the action, what the character took, and then the blaze of pain, and she makes it stronger than just telling you that it's pain. It's the blaze of pain, and what happens is that now she's stamping her feet, trying anything to distract herself from the agony in her shoulder. And so we are now seeing that it's so painful that the character has like a visceral, physical reaction to what just happened, instead of just stopping at, it hurt, or there was pain, or there was agony. She's expanded off of it to have you put yourself in the character's shoes. So this is the author showing you something. So if you close your eyes, you can actually kind of start to see this. There, amid the overhanging lilac blossoms and wisteria, sheltered from the sun, the king sat on a raised throne of white stone. He wore layers of brocade robes, so fine it was difficult to believe they had been spun from mortal fabric. The hems were lined with soft fur, the sleeves decorated with silver flames, He looked terribly beautiful, the way wolves might look beautiful in blood-splattered snow. And so this is a slightly different example because now this is a visualization. This is you seeing a character and the setting that they're in. Because if you can't see the setting, you can't see the character, the objects, then everything's going to feel really flat. So if the author was to tell you, what she could have said is, the king sat on his throne. He reminded me of a wolf. And that's not as strong because now you're missing all of that detail. And so when you're seeing this, you can now smell and see the lilac and the wisteria. You can feel the sunlight and see the way that the rays are going on the raised throne. You know the throne is a white stone throne. You can see the details of his fabric, the clothing that he wears. And it's important because in this context, this is the enemy kin. And so being able to see it, it's like, oh, okay, interesting. And there's like specific decorative parts on this outfit that he's wearing. And then talking about just how he looks and then comparing him to a wolf because, you know, like wolf in sheep's clothing. And so I thought that was another really well done scene. And that is just kind of like showing you, and then later there's like the telling you version. However, when it comes to show don't tell, telling is still important. And so I don't want you to have your takeaway being like, you should never tell when you're writing. That's not the message here. Telling can actually be really important as well. So a good way to use telling instead of showing is if there's like summarizing a really long period of time. You'll notice that a lot of epilogues do this because it will be like this big jump from like, I don't know, let's say like 10 years, and it kind of summarizes like 10 years later, the world has changed from what I remember it to be. Now there are sheep instead of dragons that fly through the sky. And so it's kind of giving you like a catch up, like you're now being caught up to what happened within that time frame. And so telling is really good in that sense as well. You can use it, it's very well and very commonly used when it comes to epilogues or time skips like that. Or you could also use it when you're kind of delivering facts about something or something that the reader already knows. So let's say the main character, they've gone through this big, horrible adventure, they had to fight a dragon and they lost their foot in the process. We as the reader, we already know that because we saw it. And so when they meet up with another character, maybe they haven't seen this character in 5 years, and they're like, oh, where have you been? Like, what happened to you? You could use telling to be like, I explained to Mary my encounter with the dragon and how that led to the loss of my foot, and then you would continue the conversation. Now that that part's out of the way, you can start to show the rest of the conversation. So now we know that this unnamed character has met with this Mary character. Mary now knows what the reader knows and what the character went through, and now they can have a discussion where it's like, we learn about Mary maybe. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so happy that you're here, like I haven't seen you in ages, and then they can talk about something that we don't know, but is important and relevant to the story and the characterization and the pacing of that. It's also good when you're like really want to speed up something, but it's really important to keep in mind that you need it in moderation because you can use it, but you have to be careful when you use it. Same with showing. Sometimes people can show way, way too much. Like, I don't need to know every single plate of whatever, the carrots and the celery and how the celery and the carrots were, I don't know, we're right next to each other and there's 100 dishes that are explained. Might be too much for me, but it's just all in moderation. And there are examples from a lot of really famous books that balance show, don't tell. First one we'll talk about is The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. So in The Hunger Games, when Katniss volunteers to take her sister Prim's place in the games, instead of telling the reader that Katniss was scared, Collins is showing her fear through like the anxiety and the body language in like the internal dialogue. So for example, she says, "My knees buckle and I slide to the floor. I have to hold on to the edges of the table to keep from sliding off my chair." So we're not directly told that Katniss is scared or overwhelmed or anything. Instead, what we're doing is we're feeling her physical reaction. In this example, her body gave way underneath the emotional weight. And the description of her knees buckling and needing to hold on to the table is really giving us that feeling of shock and fear without having to directly say it. And so if it was written like it was being told to you, it could be something along the lines of like, Katniss was terrified after hearing her name and couldn't control her emotions. You can feel that this is a lot more distance and you don't really have that emotional, impactful feeling because you're not feeling like those sensory details, which are really important. And if we want to go way back to the classics, let's go to Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Jane Austen is really well known for like the witty dialogue and the rich descriptions of her books. And so in Pride and Prejudice, when Mr. Darcy confesses his love to Elizabeth, he says, "In vain have I struggled. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you." So instead of just saying like Darcy's in love with Elizabeth, Jane Austen is showing his inner turmoil because of the phrases you can pick up from "in vain have I struggled," "my feelings will not be repressed." It really is showing you that he's been fighting against these emotions for a really long time, and it's given us pretty deep insights, to be honest, into his character and his situation. And you can see the emotional conflict that he's going through without directly being told like, Mr. Darcy was conflicted. Or you could say like, Mr. Darcy told Elizabeth he had been in love with her for a long time. You just lost the entire complexity of this character. You lost his internal struggle, and it just doesn't hit the same. Like if a man said, "My feelings will not be repressed. In vain have I struggled," I would melt, to be honest. Like complexity is so important, and it's all really just about feeling that emotion being connected to the character. So I encourage you right now, think about a book that you read that you felt really connected to. I bet that it's because there's more showing than telling, and there's a good balance. Definitely comment the name of that book because I would love to know. Recap. So we know now that show don't tell basically means that you're showing the emotions, actions, the senses, rather than just statements. And this is to really just immerse yourself into the character and what they're thinking, feeling, and seeing. Whereas when you're telling somebody something, it's essentially summarizing or directly stating something. And so this can create a disconnect from the reader because it feels kind of like a report. Why showing's important? It helps your readers feel connected to the characters and the story and everything that's going on. And it also helps build the atmosphere, the tension, and draw on readers deeper into your story. It's important to balance showing and telling. You don't want to avoid telling at all costs. And the way that you can kind of remember it is that showing is often better when it comes to like emotions and engagement. And when it goes to telling, it can be more useful for story pacing or summarization. And it's really just all about learning and understanding like when's the best time to use one or the other. My kind of little tip would be, like I mentioned earlier in the video, that if the reader already knows what happened, it's okay to kind of like explain it. Or if you're doing like an epilogue for like a big time skip, those are usually some good indicators for that. And just kind of like picture yourself like in the reader's shoes and picture yourself in the character's shoes. And that way it kind of helps, and it's something that you'll get with experience as well. So like when you read more and when you write more, you'll start to figure out where and when to incorporate these kind of things. We also went through real examples from books that I've read, as well as some very famous examples from the Hunger Games and Pride and Prejudice. So I hope that this was helpful and you have a better understanding of what show don't tell means. I really hope that you apply this to your writing, and remember, like what I mentioned before, that it takes time and it's something that you'll get with experience if you don't have experience, or it's just a pretty good reminder, anybody who's interested in writing or reading. And so yeah, definitely keep that in mind. And if you enjoyed this video and you're looking for more kind of like writing tips, or you want me to expand on certain things that I talk about when I'm reviewing books, definitely let me know in the comments and I'll happily answer those and create a video out of it. If you haven't already, definitely hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification. That way you get notified anytime a new video comes out. If you enjoyed this video, definitely hit the like button, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!